Alright, before continuing to my top 10, I do have a few things to mention, just for a little break from the actual list. Given that learning about top 20 coasters might be a bit much consecutively, and also that the script so far is, I think, like, what, 35 minutes so far? But first off, I would like to announce that I have a 2025 cameo from Coaster Studios that will be coming out on Christmas Day, where they react to my top 10 without any context as to why. Unless they have, seen my reviews and me knowing, but, these are, they don't know. At the very least, they may not know as much. And plus, I have fun commissioning these, and it's really cool to see their different perspectives on ride. Yeah, compared to like, as like, and I think they'll definitely enjoy as well. Also, do have a few honorable mentions worth noting before progressing to my top 10. First off, we have Belmont Dipper, century-old wooden coaster, pretty much is a family coaster layout. The first drop holds nice laterals, although most of the forces are tame and not at all sustained. The pacing can be solid sometimes, but other times it feels quite slow. Fun coaster, but underwhelming compared to my top 30. Then, probably my weakest of the major thrill coasters is Six Flags Magic Mountain. The only one not making my top 30 was Apocalypse Ride. This honorable mention demonstrates how strong Six Flags Magic Mountain's lineup is for me, but really Apocalypse Ride is pretty underwhelming. It has an amazing sense of speed, but it lacks the forces that I look upon on a coaster. Desert Storm also is a pretty cool ride for intense forces, but with the loops and first drop. However, the layout kind of feels short, and it does have some filler with like the helix and all. But personally, I prefer this over Accelerator at Knott's Berry Farm. Barely though. Now, saying my favorite lunch is provided by the coaster, but the ride feels really short and even lacks some force in some parts. As we've learned about Full Throttle, a couple of great elements with nothing else will get this so far in my ranking. It feels even more embarrassing that this is my best intimate coaster experience this year, or even really ever. When I miss stuff like Pantherian, Velocicoaster, Superman Ride of Steel. Seems like really great rides, but uh, uh, Boomerang at Elitch Gardens is really cool or for forceful and really consistent inversions, but feels short too. Does have like really nice, really forceful and sustained positive G forces, but really a Cobra a vertical loop that it's like that's not much. Canyon Blaster, the Adventure Dome, holds really forceful and sustained loops with an airtime hill that has nice ejector airtime. But the pacing I feel like is lacking in quantity, and the consistency for me to get engaged. And I mentioned this is the only Vegas not in my top coaster in my top 30. I was like, I do like the loops and airtime hill though, but like the corkscrews, the helix, don't just fill out the track. Roar is not an honorable mention at Six Flags America. I'm only mentioning this given this is my least favorite thrill coaster and also a significant one for this year. From the constant roughness to the forcefulness layout to the lack of speed, the coaster really feels bland and not worth riding for me. Flight of Fear at King's Dominion has an amazing and forceful first half of sustained positives on the vertical inversions, plus the corkscrew snaps. That really loses its spirit after the dreaded mid course. It definitely ruins the bit of a ride experience, as this is my least second least favorite mid course stoppage. And really, it's like all on mate. Oh, and really, it kind of like fills out the track. It's like it versus the potential I know it has. Racer 75 at King's Dominion. Similar to Wild One's layout, Racer 75 is an out and back layout of flat floater hills. I found the hills to not really hit as consistent as Wild One. Really, really had like some roughness I wasn't too bothered with, but like a lot the hills were very hit and miss, and along with one lateral moment, consistency and variety definitely impacts the ride for me. Oh yeah, don't. There's only one lateral moment, and then the rest of it is just airtime. Not much, really. Final honorable mention would be Incredicoaster, at least in some terms. This is by far the longest ride on the list, but unlike other long coasters I like, most of the track I feel is quite wasted. Long meandering turns and straight sections that most of the time don't do anything. quite literally thrill to ride. And that I actually prefer Arctic Rescue and Firebird over those for those more twisty and more engaging elements. Although both I would say I would also consider rough and meandering, but regardless, I don't think I should spend much more time on honorable mentions. Time to get to the top 10.
Mm.
And starting off with number 10 is my beloved Manta. The coaster that made me an enthusiast and a ride that, despite being quite tame, is really the complete package. Overall, I would say that Raptera has the more memorable for moments with most of Manta either having weak strength with force and or having quick pops and forces. But the variety of forces plus the flow of elements feel more complete compared to Raptera, where not much duds are present. I like the floater pops during the first half of the camelbacks, along with sustained positives in the upward turns too. Then the laterals on the double down, drop down, and twisted hill are quick but effective. There's also nice ejector pops on the twist down and the twisted hills. Finally, forceful pauses on the final turn, which is nice. Well, yes, a stupid mid-course brake run is present and the launch is really weak, which also kind of deducts points. I slightly prefer the length and variety of Manta, plus the balance between forces I feel is better, where a little bit of everything is in equal ratio and is present. I might want to talk about this ride more in the future. Right now, I have a review on that covering the elements. Really has solid pacing, not the perfect ones, and that's pretty much the critiques, including the not so much intense forces. But now we're moving on to Grizzly, King's Dominion, which kind of felt interesting. Courtesy of Gravity Group for reprofiling the layout, the coaster felt interesting in the way where it gave nice deja vu to Ghost Rider in terms of forces. Where Grizzly had good pacing and great forces for a wooden coaster, apart from the first turnaround, all of the hills are aggressively ejected airtime, sometimes paired with forceful laterals. Along with this turnaround having the heaviest laterals they've been on, with one of the best for sustainability and definitely for intensity. The pacing is also really consistent for the most part given the rapid succession of elements presented. In terms of the ride's pacing, it feels quite fast, you know. It's like after the first turnaround, it definitely picks up where he stays low to the ground. There's like this turn and like a lot, and most of the elements hit. That said, I do wish that the coaster didn't have the aforementioned large turnaround towards the start, given it feels quite interruptive for pacing. I get it's a bit scenic, and you know, like that likely wasn't reprofiled, but it kind of like kind of kills the mood for like the pacing. But at the very least, it's at the start and not hurts the middle. Otherwise, though, a pretty fun wooden coaster that combines airtime and laterals and is, well, nicely balanced. Up next is Joker's Jinx, and really this is a night and day difference compared to Flight of Fear for the central region of not having a mid-course brake run. In return, the coaster has a really interesting second half of constant sustained positives with some lateral jolts throughout in the helix, which makes a really interesting coaster that holds constant forces throughout while having some variation throughout. These variations include kinks in the track giving laterals and switching directions in the helix, moving it up and down, stuff like that. I would also want to discuss the inversions as well, which are quite intense. The Cobra Roll and Sidewinder has sustained pauses and lateral snaps included. The corkscrew perfectly ends the coaster with a sustained moment of laterals. I do wish airtime was included in order to have some diversity, but overall it'll be extremely happy with the ride experience overall if the layout or the other outdoor compact Premier LAM coasters have similar pacing. Number 7, Tatsu. Next up is an interesting one, but my god, it's really well crafted in terms of layout. Tatsu is great for a main reason of having amazing pacing that builds up to it for a finale and unique forces on your strength. Positive forces on your strength feels very unique. Having force sustained that's pulling you forwards is pretty awesome and cool with your body weight, although not necessarily intense. I also like the floatiness or hang time towards the top of the corkscrews. Falling on your seat back and restraint is also a quirk that I haven't seen on any other coaster I've done. also done so gracefully nevertheless. Then in terms of build-up, 2/3 of the coaster is built up to the largest element in the pretzel loop. By having these really tall elements of floaty and graceful moments with positive G's and amazing views of the park. Then the pretzel loop is pretty forceful as well as sustained positives on your back, which while not too different in feeling compared to the traditional coaster force-wise, still unique riding element like this for the visuals alone. Plus an intense moment that's less abrupt than Magic Mountain's thrill arrow coasters. Although I personally prefer those elements in those, although not by much. In retrospect, the coaster is an amazingly structured creation, having an entire ride feeling entertaining while building up to a climax that you've just got to get mentally prepared for. That said, I do wish B&M flyers had more elements utilizing the flying position more. Having more variety and types of these elements, unfortunately, provided it was like the Vekoma Flying Dutchman had. I was like where that ride had. I was like had a lot of like elements on your back, a lot of like elements that are taken in unique positions, like more than just a glorified inverted coaster. But alas, my chance of riding one of these was gone just like that. Oh well, at least Hatsu is in my top 10. But you know, I prefer another Magic Mountain coaster over this. In fact, that would be, well, Viper, of course. But I cannot stress how underrated and memorable this coaster is. Or the park may have X2, Tatsu, or Twisted Colossus as their well-known intense coasters. I wouldn't sleep on Viper at all. That coaster is really intense and quirky in many ways. From the first drop having 2 phases of forceful laterals, having each segment going in different directions, to the extremely forceful vertical loops that compress the riders in their seat. The first one, in fact, is my favorite version with how it constantly compresses the rider further and further. The double loops also have amazing sustainability, although slightly less forceful than Canyon Blaster's double loops. I love the ejector pop in the mid-course as well. The Batwing is okay with bursts of positives and most compact forces of loops. The loops for the Batwing, along with the corkscrews feeling okay towards the front, where not much force is present. I do like the laterals hang time in the back, though, as well as the final turns have pretty forceful laterals. As to add on, the pacing is also quite nice, having really fast pacing and sustained speed for the mid-course is something that feels like a dream, really. Plus just solid consistency between elements in the second where most of the elements have at least something coming up. Even during the worst moments of track, having only less than 3 seconds of filler, a ride is something cool anticipating. All the main things that this coaster does best is the decent quantity of really forceful elements. All of them felt memorable and unique and distinct. While I love the usual variety of forces like standing positives, laterals, and airtime, Viper is something that just elevates its elements by having different sustainabilities, different sequencing, different starts and ends of these elements, different intensities, different shapes. There are some slight hiccups in pacing overall, as the Batwing and corkscrews are top tier, along with stretches of track that don't really entertain the ride throughout. But that's me being nitpicking compared to what I like in my top 5. Viper is a really awesome ride, and you should definitely check it out if you haven't already. It's not the most comfortable with like having like some abrupt jolts in like and like some of the transitions, but it is a bit one of a kind ride. You can't really get much out there. But now speaking of my top 5, my number 5 would be Riddler's Revenge. Very much a coaster where it mixes a layout and tries out different feeling sequences of elements with consistent flow, along holding trains that are exposed to net forces, specifically making more exaggerated forces for everything. The laterals and negatives are more affected than positive G forces in this case. Regardless, this results in the forces feeling quite impactful with a unique layout for a map, at least for once I've ridden. The first 3 inversions have nice positive valleys that feel quite forceful, which it's quite cool with the size emphasize ascending the element and yet diving down in such a fluid manner. The pacing is also kept nicely with the lower turns, having some laterals and changes of banking and forceful positives for the physical turns on the non-inverting turns, even places that are unexpected, like this valley after the corkscrew. As well, we found weightlessness on this hill, which was cool on a stand-up coaster to feel, or some floater which went on the right back, feeling interesting to kind of drop back down like that. The corkscrews also give nice sensations, with the first one having a nice lateral snap, while the second one has sustained positives. Now, granted, the elements themselves aren't what make the ride stand out, although they do help the ride in a lot of cases. Moreover, I would like to compliment the aforementioned variety in trains, along with commenting that the flows very seamlessly with a nice amount of speed and present in elements that enforce, but not much more change. Granted, there's one helix that doesn't do anything, but otherwise I feel like the ride, I got a lot of my feeling. The ride feels long enough, which is another benefit given that this is my longest B&M loop out there, along with being my favorite B&M yet so far. Very refined, pretty unique, and quite fulfilling. If only I had a little more airtime, that could have made it much more better. But regardless, we're now moving on. Which now we got a strange one for me. Not unorthodox for others if they have an equivalent amount of experience for me and they chose this ride over it. It's probably quite more likely that this will be in the top 3 or something, but more so weird for me that, given my criticisms of other iBox coasters, Twisted Colossus about how it's about airtime. Don't get me wrong, Twisted Timbers at number 4 is also an airtime buffet, and personally these aren't my favorite, but I'll say that there are differences in which make me pretty much prefer Twisted Colossus, not slightly. For one, I would say that the airtime on this hill feels slightly more varied compared to Twisted Colossus. There are many hills that kind of feel a bit predictable in strength, with ever so slightly varying intensities that aren't too different. Twisted Timbers kind of mixes stuff up, as the 3 consecutive large camelbacks hold strong and sustained eject airtime. A lot of sharp pops also exist, in which these are taken back to back. Then some smaller speed hills that combine laterals with the aforementioned airtime. That's another thing. Unlike Twisted Colossus, more of a balance and for forces is present, with more laterals is incorporated, such as the speed hills and the 2 single dives with some nice lateral snaps, plus the barrel rolls down drop in the back, with a nice moment of levitating that I found better than most RNC versions that I've done, whether if it was their own rides or if it was or the rides they fabricated, like Tidal Twister. The main determining factor for Twisted Timbers for being this high in general is paired with the amazing pacing and the longer ride duration. The airtime feels like there's not much of an end, really. It keeps on firing hill after hill, not much breathers outside of the turns. All composed within a ride experience that doesn't end abruptly in action. Unlike Twisted Colossus, where each 30-second portion has one U-shaped run, Twisted Timbers holds 2 laps, feel more closer together and quite long by nearly a minute. Really, I can't gloss over the pacing for this ride given its rapid fire throughout. Even if it holds the least amount of riding in my top 10 for me, the latter statement, which is the varieties piece, is the main reason why I don't place the ride higher either. As a top 3 has also great flow and consistency, but they also have like a lot more variety that I can like take out of. Like airtime is just like, airtime, like and you can do like a lot with airtime, but really the variety of forces between like one and another, and different like unique approaches is what makes me more happier about this stuff. Up next we have West Coast Racers, which while seemingly small in size, I won't lie, the coaster pretty much checks out most stuff on my list as what's considered my favorites. The forces really varied, from the forceful ejector airtime to the graceful floater pops to the forceful laterals to the impactful air and hang time to the float on the large corkscrews to the sustained pauses on the turns and even some kicks in longitudinal forces on the launches. But what about the pacing? Right, seamlessly goes throughout elements. spending the right amount of time on each course, where it's not too drawn out but isn't abrupt either. I also didn't call out any dead spots outside of the intentional holding section for the second lap. Even then, the holding section is still entertaining and anticipates the racing aspect, which, unlike Twisted Colossus, does feel like less time is wasted in between cycles, both in distance and in duration. As a result of this reduced delay and the more varied elements, the coaster feels less interrupted in retrospect, feeling like the ride is closer to 70 seconds of prime ride time instead of the two 30-second halves, in which that actually definitely benefits the ride for like pacing wise. Finally, while the elements aren't the most punchy, they're on more of the forceful side of family thrill, meaning that I can actually at least more recall it more so than Manta. The Helix and High Five give nice G's, but to be honest, I don't really care that not all the elements are intense. All the elements are well balanced and forced, that no force has priority over the other, along with forces I remember. I think the main criticism I would give is that the majority of the layout feels like duplicates, have duplicates in a lot of ways. Like the helixes and large corkscrews, and there's a few others that I'm not thinking of as of this moment. While yes, it is the point of the elements given it's a dueling train, but for coasters in general, I personally would wish for more diversity throughout the 4,000 feet of track. Regardless, those are more nitpicky, given that for a dueling coaster, I think it achieves what it needs. Anyways, on to Silver, which is symbolic to the list, given that Paint Scheme really wants to be gold, and thus the ride as well. Wonder Woman Flight of Courage is my favorite RMC of the three. I know I'm going to sound like a broken record for repeating this shocking and unpopular opinion, or restating it at the very least, but as the final one of these controversial takes, plus the fact that I've basically repeatedly shown my tastes over and over, I'll say for Wonder Woman that the main thing that the first half has really distinct and complexity constructed elements. All having many different combinations for forces, and all without disrupting pacing. Going in order, I'll say the first drop in the back is forceful as hell, trying to yank out the riders out of the train with sustained ejector airtime. Then, to not sound repetitive, all the valleys in the first half have forceful positives sustained during the lowest segments. This is actually really great to transition from starts to ends, and more flavorful for the elements. The dive loop has nice upside down airtime, although very weak in the back. The camelback holds sustained airtime that starts off with floater and then quickly transitions into ejector airtime, although not RMC ejector airtime. The 0G roll may be floaty like the rest, but the laterals are ascending and descending have nice snaps that probably tell you that we're transitioning out the next element, and plus, it's kind of cool. The crow's nest also holds a nice pop of airtime into and out of the element, a feeling nice that it feels a bit different compared to the rest, given it's a flat turn. The 0G roll has a nice combination of weak laterals and floatiness to an average succession of rotation. I would honestly say that I have a bias towards Flight of Courage's first half of the number one. Pretty much of everything that I would say may want from a coaster and elements in sequency and frequency. I would say though, some elements could be potentially more punchy than has it now, especially given that RMC isn't known for intensive moments. But I'm fine if it's left the way it is. But what bothers me most is my perfect 9.8 out of 10 dream was ruined with the second half, feeling quite okay in comparison, as the rest is mostly composed of repetitive hills with weak ejector hills. Outside of this awesome ejector pop off of the mid-course and the intense positive filled turn, listen, while I'm not opposed to repetitive elements as looking at Twisted Timber's fourth spot, this kind of lets go of the potential for creativity that the ride was kind of building up, which is kind of disappointing given that the excitement built from the first half is a bit wasted, not to deliver. I mean, in return, it does rob the greatness of what could have been a great start, middle, and end. It leaves it just be okay. But I still love the first half um, of the ride, and really that kind of brings it to like my top two. I'll also state that the forces aren't really aggressive on this ride, which I don't have much of a problem with, but I know somebody could be bothered, so just be warned about that. It's not an RMC where you're gonna get like yanked around and all. It's more modest. Anyways, moving on to number one, we have the one, the only Ghost Rider at Knott's Berry Farm. So here we are with what I claim my favorite coaster. In terms of this coaster, this may not have the favorite elements, but does excel in like what the ride builds up in like pacing, the balancing forces, and a really symbolic structure that for excitement filled throughout a long ride experience. Where from the start, the ride starts off decently and then like continues to build more and more excitement, more thrill, more sustainability, more forces. The ride uses laterals and airtime mixed together to make a harmonic balance that keeps the ride interesting on its own. Where it starts off with like much more or less intense airtime. You have like a floater hill sustained, and you have like some like less intense floater pops throughout like some of the drops in the back. Throughout like these like hills, there's also like a lot of like lateral sustained, not truly intense laterals, but like forceful laterals enough to like be interested. It's also not at the most sustained where it's like it's kind of quick. And it's like it gives you like a second or two, but it's nowhere as sustained as what happens later. And I also really like how the first half focuses on drops, while the second half focuses on speed. And then it's like as well, this isn't really a first half, second half type of thing, like where there's not much transition, because there is actually like I think a transition that does really work well with the ride. The turnaround actually has nice lateral. Has okay laterals. It gives you like a view of the park, and then you're anticipating for that one drop that builds up all the speed again. In return as well, it kind of gives me like the vibes that I explained with like the other two wooden coasters that I said beforehand. Where there's like some like speed hills that have like pretty aggressive like airtime, paired with like aggressive laterals like back to back, and it's like there's also like much more quicker pops as well that are more aggressive. But there's also the like two turns that have really sustained laterals. Those are actually hold a lot of speed throughout, and it's like pins you against the side for like multiple seconds, especially the finale with the like large helix. It's like combine that with like the amazing speed and stuff, and you really have a ride that builds upon each other, where elements become more extreme and really keeps my excitement, so much so. In which I find it pretty engaging as it continues through the ride, just topping itself really. The very transitions as well, like kind of dip down and up, and honestly, that I was like, all of this like stuff to just keep me on my toes. It's like this is how it makes it my number one. And really like. This is actually quite the experience, really. I really like Ghost Rider. And also there's some stuff that like I was like there might be like one hill that doesn't hit, but otherwise the ride has really great pacing throughout, keeps it consistent. It builds upon each other, has an awesome start, middle, and end. Uh, I'm sorry, I'm a bit repeating myself. I'll probably just end this section right here, but it's easily my number one to do the sequencing of the elements. Although I wouldn't say it's the only contender. Granted, Intamin it wasn't too lucky with for me, but Pantherian may have potential for being very unique, transitions and having very fast pacing, along with Velocicoaster doing the build-up stick with a variety of forces. You know, the both of best worlds. There's also 2 dozen coasters out there that could prepare for over Ghost Rider as well. Those all could have amazing variety, amazing sequencing, amazing forces, like very memorable experiences. All above Ghost Rider as well. But alas, this is a mystery as well as we end off for 2025. I don't know what I'll be anticipating for the future, what parks I'll go to, or which I'll hit in my top 10, but I'll say is we'll continue to grow the park portfolio and continue my understanding for parks and coasters alike. I may travel to other countries, I may experience new manufacturers, and I may gain more or less coasters depending on my circumstances. But whatever it is, I will say I'll probably be back here talking about them, and I would say I would rather recap my experience in retrospect that I have enjoyed. Anyways, we'll see you guys next year for more coasters, and hopefully I do finish the reviews for my parks. I do need to catch up on that, but it's like in order to finish all my stuff, I think that would actually be I think I want to complete Diesel's coaster reviews before before I get to the end of 2026. You know what I mean? Anyways, I'll see y'all next review, or I guess the cameo. I guess. Bye.